Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
It's a brand new episode of Gordon Damer on Sports, and you will not find a podcast that goes as deep into the world of sports with everything that's going on than this one right now. We'll get to the Yankees and the Mets, but how about the kicking conundrum in the NFL this season? We'll get into the WNBA drama too, and why the latest headlines are just about how the game is played. It's all right now on a fresh episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. Hey, welcome into the podcast. Lots to get into today. We got week 5 in the NFL. We'll get you some picks there. The WNBA, once again, being a little bit more interesting off the court than on the court. I have a kicker conundrum that's going on right now in the NFL that I wonder if people have even noticed as of yet. And then, of course, we got the Yankees, we got the Mets, and everything there with the baseball playoffs. But before we dive into any of that, please hit that subscribe button. It really does help out the podcast. Now, full disclosure, this episode is being released a little later than usual, Saturday morning as opposed to usually on Friday at some point. We had some technical issues, so was not able to get it up and running as quickly as we would have liked to. If we got it up on Friday, like we usually do, then we would have been in full-blown celebration mode, waxing poetic about everything Cam Schlittler and what everybody's been talking about for the Yankees in the last 24 hours. Now, the Yankees play again today here on Saturday. So as fans, you got to kind of compartmentalize it a little bit. That's the nature of postseason baseball. You can't stay celebrating. That was back on Thursday. We're now on Saturday. So you got, and if the Yankees lose game 1, you know what the whole stories are going to be. Obviously, Aaron Boone's an idiot. Aaron Judge is not hitting in the clutch, and all the Blue Jays have our number. So the celebration will officially be over. But I don't want to just skip over what we saw on Thursday night, because that was big. Even for an old person like me, you know, when you're old, it's harder to impress because you've seen it all before, right? It's hard to get worked up about the new flashy thing. But Cam Schlittler, even for an old head, he was impressive like you've never seen before on Thursday night. And I think that Joel Sherman, the baseball writer with the New York Post, put it really well, because he went up to Garrett Cole and asked him, what's it like to see yourself in someone else? And you know exactly what he meant in that moment, because watching Schlittler dominate in that spot, he didn't feel like a rookie who came up earlier this year. It felt like a Garrett Cole start, right? And it felt like something you would see out of your ace of your staff, and maybe that's what Cam Schlittler turns out to be. But, you know, the comparison between those two, it almost reminded me a little bit of that scene in The Natural where Roy Hobbs has his final big at bat before the home run, and the other team brings on the young flamethrower out of the bullpen, and Hobbs looks at him, and it's like the character is experiencing, it's like he's looking in a mirror, seeing his younger self. That's kind of what Thursday night felt like. It had to be for Garrett Cole watching Cam Schlittler, because he was as good as you could be, and as good as Garrett Cole has ever been. And the beauty of it was not just that he beat the Red Sox, it was the approach of it. It was not, you know, some quirky, soft content. This was, here's the fastball, good luck. He threw 107 pitches, 96 of them were some type of fastball, 61 of them were in the strike zone, 64 of them came in at 98 miles per hour or higher, and 11 of them hit triple digits. So he basically dared the Red Sox, here it is, hit it. And they couldn't. He just overpowered it. It was like a football team not winning with some trick plays or this thing. It was lining it up and running the ball directly down your throat. And, you know, the final line, it speaks for itself, really. 8 innings, no walks, 12 strikeouts. I mean, just impressive. I mean, historic, really, right? No other pitcher has been able to do that. The 12 strikeouts, no walks, winner-take-all game. So that's impressive enough as it is. But you know what really kind of struck me about it was not just the performance, not just the win. Cam Schlittler did something that we didn't think truly was possible. He got Aaron Boone to change his mind. Going into this game, right? Winner take all game against the Red Sox. The Yankees have to win this series. At home against the Red Sox again, you cannot possibly lose that series. And to have a rookie on the mound in that spot, elimination game, hated rival, and you go in there and you're thinking to yourself, well, maybe I can get 5 innings out of him. Because the first sign of trouble, you got to think you're hitting up the bullpen as soon as humanly possible. You don't know where this is going to go. So if you went into that game thinking, hey, I'm going to get 5 innings, and you know that Aaron Boone is just itching to get to that bullpen, as if the Yankee bullpen is some great shakes, and he's devising his pitching lanes, and if it goes like this, we're going to do that, reverse engineering a win. And what Cam Schlittler did was he took the ball and he took over. So Aaron Boone never got to impact this game like maybe he did back in game 1. And, forget about the strikeouts and forget about how hard he was throwing. Cam Schlittler was so good, he got Aaron Boone to stop being Aaron Boone. They showed the video of it in the dugout. It was almost like it dawned on, you know what? I'm going to send this guy back out for the 8th inning. And this spot as well against the Red Sox team that, let's be honest, since the Aaron Boone game, the Yankees have lost 4 times to the Red Sox in October. So a winner-take-all game at home against the Boston team, you have to be able to win that game. The Yankees folding in that moment. And again, under Aaron Boone, that's kind of been the rap for the Yankees. The Yankees are usually not the team that delivers in that spot. Usually it's Boston that delivers in that spot. Finally, this time it was different. And I think Yankee fans have gotten used to, and why it's kind of hard to sometimes get excited. You're used to watching your team shrink when the lights are the brightest against the best teams, against the Red Sox, against the Astros, against the Dodgers last year in the World Series. It's one thing if it's the Twins or the Guardians or the Royals. This is finally maybe why things are going to be different. They didn't melt. They didn't shrink from the moment. They were the team that got more out of their players in this winner-take-all game. And finally on Thursday, that was the opposite of what you usually get. Now, look, I get it's only one series. You had to beat Boston, as I said. If you lost that series at home, that is a disaster. And thinking in hindsight, I don't know if Boone survives that. You were supposed to win, right? You won 94 games this year. And if you don't follow it up and beat Toronto, it's not going to matter in the long run. And Cam Schlittler will be forgotten quickly, at least, considering the team. That's how it works in the instant gratification world. But, for one night at least, the Yankees didn't just meet the expectation and meet the moment. They exceeded it. So I think that's why it was so important that Cam was so good. He forced Aaron Boone to change his mind. And even for the most jaded Yankee fans, I think that without knowing how this season's going to go, if they're going to get back to the World Series or finally win one for the first time since 2009, but even for the most jaded Yankee fan, seeing that performance on Thursday night gave that jaded Yankee fan something to get excited about. All right, let's jump to some football because I want to ask you a question. Have you noticed that NFL kicking this year has been completely all over the map? And it feels like, to me, 2 completely different things are happening at the same time. On the one hand, you have place kickers drilling kicks from distances that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. And then on the other hand, it feels like every single week we are seeing way more blocked kicks than ever before. So what's going on? Well, let's start with the long kicks first. We've seen a lot of examples of this. Brandon Aubrey, the Cowboys, I think he hit one from 64. Chase McLaughlin hit one of 65 for the Bucks. Cam Little of the Jaguars hit one in the preseason from 70 yards. That sounds, that's not something that's normal. It was not that long ago you hit a 50-yarder. That's really saying something. Now, 50-yarders are basically routine. This year, teams are converting from that distance, 50 yards, at about a 75% clip. So what used to be like, oh, wow, that's incredible. Now it's expected. You're not hitting 50-yarders because there's so many guys hitting 60 and beyond. Now, part of this is, guys, at kickers, they're just getting bigger and stronger and more specialized. But the real story of this is the K-ball change. Now, you probably know that kickers in the NFL use their own special ball called the K-ball. They've had that for years. But this season, the NFL quietly tweaked the rules. You know, in the past, kickers only got to work on those balls with a special brush for about an hour before kickoff. And that would help them smooth them out a little bit, loosen the leather, getting the creases out so that when they struck it in a game, it popped. Now, they get to prep them before game day. And that, I think, clearly has made a massive difference. Perfect example, a couple of weeks ago, Titans actually took a delay of game penalty while they were trying a 62-yard field goal, I think it was, just so they could swap in the K-ball. That's how much teams realize that mattered. Now, look, they're the Titans, so they ended up missing, but that's kind of beyond the point. So that explains the bombs from the distance this year. If you're wondering, why are so many hitting? Then the blocks. That's the other part of this story. There have already been, I think now, 17 block kicks between field goals, punts, and extra points. And blocks, they aren't just meaningless and exciting in the moment. Bears won their game against the Raiders because of a block. The Eagles have had a couple of blocks this year. Obviously, Jordan Davis, he had one against the Rams, and that field goal with the worst bad beat of all time and ran it back, I would think it was 60 yards for the score. And then on Thursday Night Football, Rams had an extra point blocked, and that kind of swung that game as well, right? Because the Niners were able to pull that one out. So what's behind it? Well, there's a lot of theory. I think CBS Sports did a really good job because they talked to a bunch of special team coaches and players. And I think the answer, to me, makes the most sense. And it's because of the new kickoff rules. Teams are now spending so much practice time figuring out that dynamic kickoff between the coverage and the returns and all the schemes of all that different type of stuff that they've had less time to work on the protection of making sure you get the kickoff. Now, in past years, you didn't really have to worry much about the kickoff. It was basically a touchback, right? On almost every kick was a touchback. But now, that's a real strategy point about how you're going to attack these kicks. And apparently, what's being missed is the protection unit. Now, usually those type of rule changes don't have this kind of ripple effect, at least not early on. This one really has. So kickers are able to hit kicks that they've never been able to hit before. That one seems pretty explainable and something that I think is going to continue on. But that the block kicks, that's going to be fascinating to watch. It's a super exciting play and one that really can change games, right? Like you're in position to add to your lead, and then all of a sudden it's being run back the other way. So that is a huge part of the story. So very exciting stuff. And I don't know if other people have noticed it as of yet, but if it continues this way, it's going to be impossible to avoid. All right, let's shift to NFL picks for week number 5. I got 3 games for you this week, and I'm 3 or 4. It might be 4. Giants Saints. Giants are plus 1.5. And to me, this is a huge game for the Giants. You know, as much as exciting and as fun was the Jackson Dart debut last week, the Giants need to win this game. You know, coming into the year, what was all the talk about the Giants? Oh, you know, the schedule, it's just so brutal. It's just so brutal. Nobody looked at that schedule and thought, you know what's a really brutal game? Saints in week 5. Now, I will say, the Saints have not been nearly as bad as we thought that they were going to be. Now, they've not won, but they're not getting blown out week after week. They've been competitive. They've been feisty. And there's no game that the Giants are an automatic win against. But this is one they have to win. Because after this week, Eagles, Broncos, Eagles. This is a game where you just simply have to win it. Otherwise, all the good feeling from last week is going to go by the board really fast. And to me, this is one about the pass rush. Giants defense has to be able to get after the quarterback. Saints offensive line is banged up. I want to see this ferocious pass rush that we've never, it was a little bit the factor last week. Spencer Rattler's 0-14 as a quarterback. Go get him, win the game, end of the day. Number 2. Give me the Seahawks at home against the Bucs. Baker Mayfield is banged up. Bucs offensive line is banged up. And I think the Seahawks defense is going to finally be able to take. I keep waiting for Baker Mayfield to have a 3-interception game. He's not had one so far. I think he's had just 1 turnover in the season. But I think it's this week he finally gets hit with it. Give me Carolina at home, plus 1.5 against Miami. Miami got a win last week. They shouldn't have. The Jets should have won that game. And now with no Tyreek Hill, I just get the feeling Carolina is finally going to, take care of business and get another victory. And then, I can't believe I'm saying this, give me the Jets. Give me I hate money, apparently. I just want to lose it all gambling. Jets are taking on the Cowboys, plus 1.5 for the Jets, taking on a Cowboy team. The Cowboy defense is terrible. The Jets defense is even worse. So I look at this game. Things are spiraling out of control for Aaron Glenn. All the early optimism of the season is gone. And when he took over, there were no expectations. But being 0-5 was not among the expectations. Even though you didn't have any expectations. This is not a barren roster. This is a team that has some pieces in place. This is not a team that should be 2 or 3 wins. If you are winning 2 or 3, the Jets have more talent now than they've had in a while. Now, I'm not saying it's a complete team. The defense has major holes, and the offense, the quarterback position's a problem. They don't have a second receiver. So I'm not saying they have to go out and start winning a ton of games, but you have to win some games. The only expectation coming into the year for the Jets and Aaron Glenn was Aaron Glenn has to look like he knows what he's doing. So far, he's not met that criteria. They're 0-4. They should have won the Steelers game. They should have won last week. They're busy beating themselves. You have the Breece Hall quote of other teams shoot themselves in the foot. We shoot ourselves in the head. That's not a good look for a rookie head coach who you thought, based on a lot of the factors of making him the head coach, he had things going in his favor. He's been here before. He's been part of a turnaround. He's been a long-time assistant coach. He knows what he's doing. You've gotten no benefit of that so far. So even for a season that there were not really many expectations, Adam Gase won 7 games with the Jets. You got to win some games. You don't get a free pass. There is no honeymoon. Now, I'm not saying he's got to go win 7 games, but you got to win some. And it almost like it multiplies week in and week out. Each week you go without a win, especially when you had some winnable games. And for him talking, we talked about this on the podcast last time, about not being the same old Jets. The only way you're able to turn that around is by winning some games. So this is an absolutely critical week against a flawed team in Dallas that's coming off an emotional tie against the Packers on Sunday Night Football. Go out there and win the game outright. No more moral victories. There are no more moral victories for the Jets. They need to go out and get an actual victory, and I think they finally do that this week. All right, let's talk a little WNBA, because the WNBA is back in the headlines, and not because the WNBA finals are going on, because let's be honest, chances are, unless you're a diehard fan of the WNBA, you probably didn't even know the WNBA finals were going on right now, right? You probably can't name the teams that are playing in the WNBA finals, and if you can't name the teams that are happening in the WNBA finals, chances are you cannot name a single player who is playing on one of those 2 teams in the WNBA finals. But if you see the headlines, the league is back in the spotlight, obviously because of the labor drama going on. This has been going on for a while, but the collective bargaining agreement of the WNBA, the deal between the players and the league, is set to expire at the end of this month. And this past week, Nafisa Collier went viral after she basically just ripped the WNBA commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, just tore her limb from limb. She accused her of refusing to fight for higher salaries for the players, obviously something they want. She said that she dismissed player value. And she even shared details of private conversations that she had with Engelbert. And the most damning line, the one that gets the most attention, is that according to Collier, that Caitlin Clark should be grateful she makes $16 million off the court, because without the WNBA platform, she'd have nothing. This is what Collier said that Engelbert said to her. And another Engelbert line, allegedly, was that the players should be on their knees thanking their lucky stars for the TV deal that Engelbert secured this past year. Now, to be fair, Engelbert has denied those quotes. Said that they were inaccurate. Now, she didn't get into all the nitty-gritty. People are saying, well, she didn't deny it outright. But that's how these things go. That's how negotiations go. Players go public, and the WNBA players, they clearly want to be public and get aggressive and try to win the narrative. That has been their approach the entire time. management generally takes a more professional stance and plays it more close to the vest. This is not new. This is what happens. WNBA players want to be like all the other leagues. This is what happens in all the other leagues. When the baseball CBA is getting worked out, the players will be ripping Rob Manfred publicly. Rob Manfred won't fight back tooth and nail. Same thing will happen in the NFL when I don't know what their deal's not up for a while. But this is the dance of negotiation. Now, what I think was very interesting and very smart on Collier's part, she made Caitlin Clark the centerpiece of her statement. Why? Well, she knows that because in the court of public opinion, you can't lose if you're on the side with Caitlin Clark. She is the single biggest star in women's basketball. It's not even debatable. And it's really arguably the only reason the league gets the attention that it does. And by adding her in that statement, you know that statement's going to get far more attention. And by framing it as Clark needs saying Engelbert says that Clark needs the WNBA instead of the obvious reality, which is the opposite. The WNBA needs Caitlin Clark. What Collier does basically is paint the league as being somehow anti-Clark. And if you can convince fans, the commissioner, the league, they're anti-Caitlin Clark, well, you're going to win the PR battle it's going to be a landslide. How dare you say that about Caitlin Clark? I don't know what was said, what wasn't said. Again, Engelbert has denied it, but I would find, and I'm not the biggest WNBA fan. I don't know Kathy Engelbert from Hole in the Wall. I find it very hard to believe Kathy Engelbert could be that delusional to think that Caitlin Clark needs the WNBA rather than the other way around. Caitlin Clark was a millionaire before she even came into the WNBA. But that shows you, to me as well, on the other side of this, just how fragile this upswing is in popularity. What you're really admitting there by saying the WNBA has been nowhere for 30 years, has never turned a profit, and they suddenly have a pulse, and that is because of one player. And I think that this is one of the things that the owners or the league has to be fighting. You want all these upgrades, but do we know that the popularity surge is real, or is it tied to one player? And then obviously you have Clark come out and support Collier's statement, and people are making it a big deal. Of course she's going to support the players. They're on the same side. And it's funny that the players are finally getting on, using Caitlin Clark. First 2 years, it seemed like they did everything they could to deny that the league's popularity was mostly tied to her arrival in the league. So it's going to be interesting to watch. The numbers matter here. The WNBA, as I said, they've lost money every year of its existence. The numbers fluctuate. It's hard to know really what's true and what's not. The number last year was $40 million they lost, and that grew because, in part, they started having charter flights, and that costs about $25 million a year. But the good news is they've never turned a profit, but the new media deal kicks in next year. That's why the players opted out. That's why the CBA is open right now. And that league share of the NBA's deal, plus all the sponsorships and all that stuff with CBS Sports and other things, that could turn what was say it was $40 million. The numbers you would think mean that that's going to be a profit next year of about $100 million. So that is huge. But again, it's clear the growth is real and the future does look bright. But negotiations on what might happen down the road, that's not what's happening right now. Now, look, the players opted out right now because that media deal's about to hit. They don't want to wait any longer. And right now, the WNBA is a league, again, has never been profitable. And it is still almost entirely dependent on Caitlin Clark's popularity to stay relevant. Like, if she doesn't play as much next year as she didn't play this year, I don't know. So the player salaries are going to rise, but they're not going to make this massive jump right away. That is not what happens in a negotiation. So it seems like the entire media has taken the player's side in this, and that Kathy Engelbert is being painted as the clear villain. And I guess it makes sense. But a lot of the coverage, though, makes it seem like her job is on the line, and because the players dislike her, and they've made this very that's who they're negotiating with. Again, this is a negotiation. But that happens at every single sport. As I said, NFL, when their CBA is up, the players are going to be saying awful things about Roger Goodell. That's the reality. Engelbert works for the league. She works for Adam Silver and the NBA owners who have bankrolled this league. And if they're happy with her and with her performance, she's not going anywhere. Now, I don't know. Maybe they won't be happy with her performance based on this negotiation. But honestly, the job she's done, I don't know. It seems like a pretty solid job. There's $75 million raised in the first ever capital raise. They got $925 million in franchise fees. They have $76 million in sponsorship. Like, I'm no businessman, but I don't know. It seems like it's pretty good, especially for a league, again, hate to keep pointing it out, has never turned a profit. Now, they're going to turn a profit next year, but again, the player, they want to try and seize on this moment and get bigger salaries and better benefits, and they want them now. They want them yesterday. And publicly, they have taken a very clear approach that they want to win the PR battle. They want to have the public be on their side with the T-shirts at the All-Star game. Pay us what you owe us. So it almost seems like their approach to this whole thing is whatever you can do to get attention for the league is good. And I don't know, maybe that is right. I've never been in a CBA negotiation. But I would like to think, hopefully behind closed doors, they're being a little bit more reasonable. When you hear people bring up how much more the NBA players make than the WNBA players, all you're doing by saying those numbers and those, you don't understand how economics work. Yes, the NBA players make more because they bring in more, and the NBA has been profitable for a long time. It's almost like on Seinfeld where George is complaining that Ted Danson makes more per episode than he does because he's just started. I mean, obviously. Look, I think a deal will get worked out. There'll probably be more back and forth in this thing. But if this ends in a strike or a work stoppage or a lockout, whatever you call it, you know, the WNBA has more eyeballs on it now than ever before because it has eyeballs on it. It never had eyeballs on it before. It was just something that was out there that nobody paid attention. Let's not get revisionist history. And that is tied to one player, Caitlin Clark. But just realize that spotlight is fragile. And if the league has a labor stoppage, that momentum could change and vanish very quickly. Now, I think The Athletic had a very smart look of the work stoppage of the NHL in '94, how it kind of derailed the league for a long time. Similar thing could very easily happen then. '94, the NHL was kind of like it was on the upswing, and that really killed that momentum. So, yes, this is a big moment for the WNBA, but I think it should also be a reminder. And look, I'm sure that they realize this, but they're not on the level of the NBA or the MLS. They're not on that level. It's growing, but it's not there yet. It's not a finished product. You'd like to keep this thing growing, and if they ever do, I can't imagine that they would have a work stoppage. They could be just as easily back in obscurity before too long. Hopefully that's not going to happen, and this is all just the dance of negotiation, and it's certainly fascinating television. The problem is this is getting far more attention than their actual product, which can't be good for the actual product. All right, finally, last but not least, let's talk about the New York Mets. You know, when you root for a team, you want them to have a memorable season, and you'd have to say the New York Mets season will be remembered. It will be written down in the history books for a very long time. To have the season that they are, you know, there are embarrassments, there are failures, and then there is the 2025 New York Mets. People have used the word collapse for the Mets because they failed to make the playoffs despite the second highest payroll in the sport. That's not correct. Collapses happen in an instant. You ever see a building collapse? Happens in the blink of an eye. The Mets, they were a slow motion train wreck for 3 months. One of the worst teams in the entire sport, despite spending second highest in the entire sport. And to have it wrapped up in the most perfect way, Shakespeare could not have written a better ending. Getting shut out by the Marlins on the final day when all you needed to do was just beat Miami and go to the playoffs, and the Mets did not even score a run. Even by Mets standards, that's bad. That's really bad. And I know this has been pointed out a ton, usually with teams that have a collapse or whatever, free fall, I like to use the term. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment where it went off the rails. The Mets, not the case. You can look right at the calendar. June 12th. June 12th, that is the day that Kodai Senga got hurt covering first base. Up until that point, Mets had the best record in baseball. It was all going so well. And, maybe that event is not as notable. It's the point where the season turned, but it was going to turn anyway because the Mets pitching was always going to crumble. And that is the headliner. When you go through the collapse, there's plenty of people to blame. When it's this bad and you miss the playoffs despite the second highest payroll, everybody's to blame. But it's almost like the James Carville line from 92 about it's the economy stupid. With the Mets, the 2025 Mets, it's about the pitching stupid. That's where it started. Now, it's not completely the entire picture, but it is the main headline. The pitching fell apart. And it's funny because early on, rotation looked good. And after last year, who are we to doubt David Stearns? But it was obviously fool's gold. It was never going to remain as good as it was. And once Senga got hurt and the injuries started piling up, Griffin Canning going down, McGill, all these different injuries, those little cracks started. Now, I was skeptical because there weren't that many good teams in the National League. Mets didn't have to beat some juggernaut. They had to beat out the Cincinnati Reds. But by September, the Mets went 10-15, and the team ERA was 4.64. And the single most damning stat that I've seen, and this is a great one, after July 26th, the Mets won one game when scoring fewer than 5 runs. I didn't think that was possible. So basically, if they didn't score 5 runs, they lost. That is absolutely incredible. They didn't get one pitching performance. Well, they got one. But, that tells you all you need to know. And you can point to whatever you want in terms of, injuries or inconsistencies. When you're sitting at the top of baseball's financial food chain, outspending everyone but the Dodgers, when you're big daddy billionaire Steve Cohen, you don't get to play, this went wrong, that one. Your payroll is more than $300 million. You're supposed to be covered. Instead, the whole thing melted down. And, looking at the Mets payroll, it's like when you come back from the supermarket and you spend a couple $100 and you look at what you bought and you're like, I spent $200. What did I spend $200 on? I got these 6 things. Well, how can I spend $200? That's the Mets payroll. You look at it and you're like, $340 million for this? We don't even have an ace. Shouldn't we have bought an ace while we were at the store? So, look, you can look ahead. And at this point, that's what it's about for the Mets because they're not in the playoffs. And pitching has to be better next year. It would be hard for it to be any worse. But the Mets have other things to fix, man. They got to fix the defense. I'm not a big believer in defensive metrics, but you look at their defense, all the metrics. I don't just look at one. All the metrics tell you the Mets were a very bad defensive team. So you got bad pitching, you got bad defense. That's kind of how you wind up where you wind up on the outside looking in, even with the $340 million. And then, of course, the final piece on the poop Sunday, the cherry on top of the dumpster fire, if you will, was the trade deadline. And everyone thought it was really bad, the trade deadline, all the moves that they made. Statistically, it was the worst trade deadline in baseball this year. Fangraphs graded every team, and the Mets finished dead last in terms of wins added, behind the Twins, who basically traded away everything that was not bolted down. They traded away 10 players, and the Mets somehow were worse. So that, again, much like the pitch, the reason why I was skeptical that the Mets would blow this was it was hard to blow it. It really took work to blow it. You had to do so many bad things over a long period of time. And Cedric Mullins and Ryan Helsley, they certainly did their part. The Mullins, I mean, he had an OPS plus of 62, so he was basically 40% worse than an average player. And the other part of this, why I was skeptical, so much to go wrong, so many different areas. The Reds were the team that chased you down. The Reds were not some juggernaut. They weren't the Guardians winning 15-16. They played mediocre baseball over the second half of the season. So, to me, lots of people to blame. And I've heard a lot of people focus on David Stearns or the pitching coach. The first person to me on this is Steve Cohen. Yes, the players are bad. David Stearns was disastrous, no question about it. But Cohen is the face of the Mets franchise. He is the guy. Big daddy billionaire. Bought the team, strutted in. Everybody, Steve Cohen's here to save the day. Brand new day for the New York Mets. We're 5 years, I would figure we're going to win a World Series. Well, here we are. And the Mets have made, out of 5 years, Mets have made 2 playoff appearances. 2 in 5 years. 40% of the time. So 60% of the time, they've missed the playoffs. And it wasn't just this year they were spending. And if you want to focus on David Stearns, that's fair. Who brought David Stearns here? It was Steve Cohen. So that marriage between these two guys that looked like, and it was going to be this match made in heaven, it has been nothing that was promised. The Steve Cohen tenure has wildly underperformed expectations. Wildly. It was supposed to be a brand new day. It's not been a brand new day. It's been kind of the same old day. And the kicker is, look, every team undergoes a bunch of changes. The Mets, it will be easy to make changes because there's a bunch of players you'll just be happy to move on from. And I'm sure Steve Cohen is just going to keep spending money because that works so well. I would think one thing I would feel confident in is that Pete Alonso is going to be somewhere else. You can't just keep throwing money at a big bat and ignoring the other parts of the team. And you talk about the defensive metrics, especially in the infield. Pete is not a guy. He was a really bad first baseman this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Mets attack this. They fired a bunch of coaches on Friday. Okay. And look, I'm sure they are going to spend a ton of money like they do every single year. But that's just a continuation of the plan that they've tried now 5 years in a row. The Mets, again, they were supposed to be the combination of the brains of Stearns and the wallet of Cohen. And who was going to possibly beat them? And this was going to transform the Mets organization into this new juggernaut. And instead, it's really just been more of the same. The only difference is they spend a whole lot more money doing it.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
Okay, that's going to do it for another episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. If you've watched or listened this far on whatever platform you're listening or watching on, please do me a favor. Hit that subscriber button. It really does help out the podcast. It's the only thing I care about is you hitting that subscribe button. So do it right now. Don't wait any longer. And we'll see you next week with a fresh episode, hopefully with no more technical problems, of Gordon Damer on Sports right here.